Hello, I'm Debbie Gatlin, and we are in the Hebrew month of Adar. It's the 12th month of the biblical calendar, and it's the last month. And it's a month that we are to go out with joy and be led forth with praise, according to Isaiah. It's a month to rejoice. It's a month where we have great strength. It's a month where we're to leap into the purposes and plans of God. We're to leap into faith. You know, faith, it takes leaps. It risks, it leaps. And we're to leap like a deer. We're to develop those hind feet for high places that God has for us, higher places. And one of the things that we celebrate in this month in the Hebrew calendar is Purim. It's celebrated in Adar. Purim, or in Hebrew is called Purim. In this month of Adar, Purim is celebrated, and it means the casting of lots, because lots were cast for the Jewish people to decide when they should be annihilated. And Haman wanted to kill the Jewish people in the month of Adar. But this whole book, or the whole celebration, the whole book of Esther, or the whole celebration of Purim, is all about this, that God turns things around. That when things are impossible, there's a living God that turns things around because he loves us. He's a God that loves us. And I want you to know you are loved by God. You are loved by God. You are loved by God. And I felt such an urgency to talk about Purim, because I believe there's a lot of people that you need things to turn around, and you don't see the hand of God moving on your behalf right now. You think, oh God, where are you? But see, the book of Esther, God's name is never mentioned. His name is never mentioned through the whole thing. And yet they don't see it at the time. Let me say this to you. They weren't seeing that God was with them at the time, but God was right there. We can look back and we can see the whole story. We can say, oh, did you see how God did that? Do 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 you see how he delivered them? Oh, God, you're so amazing. We can see it, but they couldn't see it at the time. They couldn't see God's goodness at the time. They couldn't see that he had a plan to deliver them. They couldn't see this chess master, the master chess person, that this master at chess. I can just see this great big chessboard with all these pieces that he's set up, and he's already got all the moves. He knows what to move. He knows what the enemy's going to do, and he's already got every person in place. And that's what he did in the book of Esther. I'll tell you what, God has set people in your life in places for you for such a time as this. God has set people in our nation and the world for such a time as this. He's never taken off guard. Our God is never taken off guard. He knows everything. And let me say this, the Feast of Purim is all about this God that never is taken off guard. This God that loves us with a ferocious love. This God of great grace that gives grace when we don't even deserve it. That's what grace is. We don't deserve it. We can't earn it. But he just gives it to us because he loves us. And that's what the book of Esther is all about, how God flips things, where they want to kill the Jewish people. Haman wants to annihilate the whole race. And God turns around an impossible situation and causes their enemy to be annihilated. Causes the one that had all these plots and plans against them for it to backfire on them, and they end up being hung on the gallows that they meant for the Jewish people. God's an amazing God. So this Feast of Purim that we're talking about today, it's an amazing feast. It's a time of great joy and celebration. Oh man, I was watching some videos of some Jewish people in the Brooklyn, New York area, and they were like dancing in the streets and they're hanging on each other. They were just, the kids were all dressed up in different kinds of costumes, because that's what they do. They dress up in different costumes, and And they dress up in costumes because it's all about how Esther was hidden. She wasn't allowed to let her kindred, no, she wasn't allowed to let anyone know that she was Jewish. She was hidden in the palace. What? For such a time as this. And it's all about how God is hidden. He's masked. He's hidden in the book of Esther. His name's never spoken out loud. It's not read. You don't see God in any part of the book of Esther. But he's there from beginning to the end. He's unveiled. Later on when you look, you can see, just as I said, this is an exciting feast where they eat and they eat and they eat and they eat and they drink and they party, they laugh, they shout, they give gifts to one another of food and all kinds of goodies they give to eat. I saw them with some people walking with baskets, just handing out gifts to people, and then they give gifts to the poor. They remember the poor. I love that they have games and then they read the book of Esther, of course, and they have to read it in the morning, they read it at night, they make it fun. They have dances with it, they sing with it, they have skits with it. They shout over Haman's name, boo, and over Esther and Mordecai's name, they go, yeah, and they shout. I mean, they make it so much fun. And what is it about? It's all to remember that God is a deliverer, that God turned it around. I love Michael Brown. I was listening to him talk about Purim, and he said, you know what? There's a theme for all the feasts pretty much, and he said, it's this. They wanted to kill us. God delivered us. Let's eat. Yeah. And that's what they do in Purim. They wanted to kill us, but God delivered us. Come on, let's eat, celebrate. So this is a time of great celebration. And I felt like we needed to know that God will turn things around. I was listening to Michael Brown just tell some stories about Purim. And he was talking about in 1991, during the Gulf War, that the Saddam Hussein, and I guess during Purim, they dressed up like him, like he was the Haman at that time, the wicked Haman that wanted to kill the Jewish people, because he was dropping hundreds of Scud bombs into the Israel, and there was hardly any casualties where there should have been multitudes of these bombs are dropping all over in these different places and nobody's getting hurt, and it's it was crazy. And that the Gulf War during that time, it ended on, let me tell you this, the Gulf War ended on the Feast of Purim. Oh, how do you do that? God. Then he's telling another story, which I thought was so amazing. I'm just telling you these things because our God, he may not be seen. You may not feel lightning bolts or thunder right now, but God's there. And again, let me remind you, in the book of Esther, they couldn't see God in the midst of all the stuff that was going on. They couldn't see, but we can look back, we can look at the book and read it through. And when we read it through, we say, oh my goodness, I see God there. You just see God orchestrating the whole thing. So he's telling the story about some high rabbis, I forget what, rabbinical rabbis or something. And he was telling this story about a Russian man to the Jewish people, and the Jewish people started going, hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. And the rabbinical rabbi goes, hooray, hooray, hooray. And they were like, why did he say that? Because that meant, instead of hurrah, it meant an evil man. Well, this is during Purim, and you know what happened? That was when Stalin had his stroke, and a few days later, he died. Stalin was getting ready to mass murder the Jewish people. And God, again, during Purim, turns this thing around. turns it around. Now, God is a God of what? Turn around. He's going to turn things around. And I love in the one part in Esther when she finds out that the Jews are going to be murdered. She sees Mordecai out there, feet, and he's got sackcloth and ashes on, and he's wailing and crying. I mean, the whole city's in an uproar. People just, they're crying and rock and crying. And can you imagine? You got a poster hanging before you telling everyone on a certain date they can come and they can kill you, that they're expected to kill you, so they can have all your possessions, to kill your family, your babies, your sons and daughters. And so the city's in an uproar. And Esther's like, she gets some nice clothes and she tells her eunuch to take it out to Mordecai, and Mordecai's like refuses to take it, put those clothes on. And she's like, and then he sends word back through her eunuch about the decree that had been made over the Jewish people. And she's afraid because Mordecai's asking her to go into the king, who was the one that signed this decree. I mean, he was her husband, but he was not known for being this amazing, nice guy. This guy was not a nice guy. If you went unannounced before him, he would have you killed, unless the scepter was extended. And so she didn't know if it would be extended. And Mordecai's, you go and petition for your people. And I love, this is the famous verse from Esther. So Mordecai says to her, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your family's house will perish. And who knows whether you have attained royalty for such a time as this, or I love this, King James says, who knows if you've been called to the kingdom for such a time as this. But this one part, it says, deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your family will perish. Now, one of the names that they have for God, and the Jewish people have for God, is Hamakom, and it means place. Listen to this, for if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, Hamakom, another Hamakom. He'll rise from another place. What? God's got it. He's already got a plan B if Esther doesn't step up to the plate, but she did. You know what? Let me tell you again, the book of Esther is about God doing amazing things. And as she steps up, she calls for a fast for 3 days and with no food, no water. And she's going to the king on the third day. She puts her royal robes on. She's going, but she's not sure that he's going to favor her. But the scepter's extended, and you just see this snowball. If you've ever lived up north, you know you can start rolling a snowball, a certain kind of snow, and it'll start getting bigger and bigger. You can just see the snowball of God getting ready to destroy the enemy because she stepped into her destiny. And I want to encourage you during this time when it seems like everything that can be shaken is being shaken, because it is. You serve an amazing God, and he doesn't want you to think like the world thinks. He doesn't want you to be a people without hope. Let me say that again. He wants you to think differently than the world thinks. He wants you to see that your God is moving even when you can't see him. He wants you to know that he's turning things around because you're trusting in him and his goodness, that he'll work everything together for good. And wherever Esther went, she prospered. I'll tell you what, get in the flow of God. He wants to use you as a deliverer. Favor surrounds you. He'll put you in the places he needs you. He just asks you to believe him. And I love that Purim was celebrated because everything that Haman had planned to do to the Jews, it happened to him, where he built that gallows because he hated Mordecai, because Mordecai wouldn't bow down to him, he ends up having to parade Mordecai through the streets and give him all the glory and all this honor that he wanted Mordecai to give to him. And then he ends up getting hung on the gallows that he made for Mordecai to hang him on. And not just him, but his sons were hung on that gallows too. And then everything in it, probably his whole household, his wife and everything else was destroyed. And all the enemies of the Jews were annihilated. God turned everything around because he saw a people that would raise up for such a time as this, that would step forward for such a time as this. And he wants to remind you in Purim that God is a God that turns weeping into dancing. That God is the God that will turn mourning into rejoicing. That this is a God that you serve. That he's a God that flips and turns everything around. Now you have a blessed Purim, which is just in a couple days. And I want you to know that you are so loved by God. Trust him. Look at the book of Esther and see the hand of God from beginning to end. Though his name's not mentioned, and let me say again, though you may not feel the earthquake, though you may not feel the thunder, though you may not know that God is working, he's working on your behalf. He loves you. And have a wonderful, wonderful day. God bless you. Bye-bye.